right. Hey, Kyle.
So, hello, Christopher. Back for another episode here of Shards and Shenanigans. This time we are moving on from the prologue into chapter 1 of Mistborn. So let's just jump right into it.
I like the sound of
Unless
that.
do you have any questions? Anything you want from me before I recap us?
No, I think I like the recap. An unbiased recap, or at least from my perspective, it will be good and refreshing.
Okay. So I don't know what to call these little things. So before the chapter, there's like a quote, not even a quote really. It's like someone talking in some kind of either in their own head or, it's just like a little treat, a little snack before each chapter. And this one, I can't tell so far. It seems like it's a different perspective from the first one.
Mm-hmm.
The first one and the prologue to me seemed like it was going to be probably the hero in the tale, just kind of based on, they were saying, they're the hero of ages. Um, there's a lot of doubt. This one talks about having armies, which I think like a hero could have armies, obviously, but it just came off to me as a little more like, I don't know, like vengeful, or like I just got an evil feeling when I read it.
Yeah,
So not
yeah.
sure if it's the same person or not. Could be, um, but I made a note in the book that I felt like it might have been a perspective from somebody else.
Interesting.
So we'll see. So chapter 1, ash fell from the sky. I think as it's probably going to continue to do a lot in this book. And so we are introduced to a young ska named Vin. She is hanging out in Luthadel in a sounds like a hideout, with her crew. So we kind of learn through this chapter that she's on a crew kind of in the underworld of Luthadel, and they're kind of looking to make money, scam people, that kind of thing. Um, we've learned that she has a brother, Reen. He taught her lots of things, including, um, that you can't trust anybody, including him, because he betrayed her. Um, and sounds like I can't remember this is in chapter 1 or chapter 2, so hopefully I'm not getting ahead of myself. Sorry, listeners, if I am. Um, trying to be spoiler free, and we can go back and edit this out if we'll make a
Exactly.
note at 3:20 to come back in and edit this out. But he she it sounds like Reen, the brother, was on the crew as well with her, and he kind of took off and left a big debt with the boss, who we're going to get into here in a minute. So that's Vin and Reen. Vin seems like she's going to be a big character. So she's hanging out. She's trying to kind of hang out in her own little corner of this underground hideout. Try to kind of get some alone time. Ulef, don't know if that's going to be a big character. We don't really hear anything from him, besides him coming to grab her in this instance. But I thought it was kind of interesting that everybody else that we talk about in this crew and all the people that are in the, I keep saying heist, but I don't think this is like in the scam that they're trying to run, is not mentioned. Like there's all these other people involved, but they specifically mention Ulif here. So maybe he's going to have a bigger play here in the future. I'm not sure, but he comes and grabs Vin, and they say Kamen uh, has been basically searching for her. He's ready to go. We've learned now that Kamen is the leader of this group, and he's not a nice guy. He is certainly ruling with an iron fist, including slapping Vin around a little bit to the point where he slaps her, or hits her, causes her to bleed. So not a super fun guy. Um, so um,
They call
kind
him
of moving on.
Cayman in the audiobook, and I hate him,
What did I?
man. He's the
Yeah,
worst.
What did I say?
You
Cayman?
call him Cayman, yeah. But I mean, I get
Okay,
it.
Cayman.
Phonetically, it looks like,
Cayman.
but they call him
Cayman.
Cayman in the audiobooks. Not that the audiobooks are law, but this is just how I've experienced it the first time.
Okay. I like Cayman. Cayman. All right.
I like
So,
well, I don't like Cayman actually.
no, I don't like him, but I'm
Yeah.
saying that pronunciation's fine.
Yeah.
So I underlined this. Who knows if this is important, but I thought it's interesting that clearly some kind of form of currency. They call it boxings here in this universe. So that's something new in the universe for me. I thought that was kind of a interesting thing to call your money. And so
And the money's not made out of, the kind of things our money was made out of. You know what I mean? If you think of
well, I don't know because I don't know what it is yet.
it.
I don't know. It just says worth thousands of boxings, and I mean,
Boxings.
what's a boxing? I have no idea.
Right. Yeah. What is a boxing?
So, yeah. So it sounds like they're trying to run a scam here. Cayman's worried. He's worried. They've heard about the Tresting murder up in the North Country, and that any kind of such disturbance is going to be bad for business, and so they're a little concerned about that. So this is where he hits Vin, and but then she uses here. I've got this big circled here, her luck, and that's something that's capitalized. I know in the prologue I got really I honed in on some of the things that were capitalized. He capitalizes luck here, so she uses a bit of her luck, which to me is probably falls in line with what we saw maybe when Kelsier burned tin. So we'll see.
Cool.
And so she uses her luck to basically get him to not continue to hit her. We learn that this plan that they have is for Cayman to play the part of Lord Jeddu, as basically this lowly country nobleman who's down on his luck. His family's down on their luck, and they could use a pick-me-up from essentially the government. And another person in on this plan is someone named Theron. I don't know. How would you say it?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Theron, okay. So Theron sounds like he's another kind of dirtbag, brought Cayman in on the plan. And while they're, I guess, running this together, Theron's going to go be in another room, and Cayman is going to play Lord Jeddu all alone while we're trying to, scam this here. So, basically, an obligator comes in to where they're at. It's Praelin.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, no, Praelin.
Praelin Laird. So he comes into the room. He's got the shaved head like all obligators do. He's got the tattoos around his eyes. And he's a senior. It says he's a senior bureaucrat in the Ministry's Canton of Finance. And then he had some lesser obligators, some minions trailing behind him into the room. And so they kind of get right down into brass tacks. Came in saying, "Hey, man, my family's really down on their luck. We really need this contract." Find out that he's trying to use these boats, in quotes here, to ferry or to kind of put them in service of the Canton of Finance as a contract. And this obligator's like, "Well, why should we choose you?" And Cayman comes in and says, "Hey, we'll kind of half our price to 50 boxings." And this kind of blows the obligator away. He's very excited about that, but he's still suspicious. And he's like, why do you, why should we go with you when we could go with someone more reputable? And so Cayman has some good he's a little suave here, where he's like, listen, like, who else would treat you better? Like, you're helping us out. You'd be our biggest, pretty much only contract. We'll serve you with the best. All these other people, they're going to have all these other contracts they have to fulfill. It helps us, kind of keeps us afloat. Once we're afloat and we can kind of pay down some of our debt, then we can go out and get other contracts too. And so towards the end of this, that's when Vin, she turns on her charm by using some luck, and plays with the emotions of Laird, Prelin, and he kind of does it, and he's like, very well, I'll take the proposal back to our people at the council, and that's kind of that. So we learned through here that, or maybe this, again, I can't remember if this is the first chapter or second chapter, because I read them both before we recorded today. So if it's in the second chapter, we'll check 11, 17. But the Vin talks about how someone talks about how Cayman is like, he likes to keep her around for some reason, and he knows that his luck, and he probably doesn't even know that that's what's happening here. Is changes and that good things happen when Vin's around, and she's clearly using her luck to stay in favor with him and not basically get killed by him or put out into the street, that kind of thing.
Right.
So it's definitely very interesting, and that's kind of it. It's a pretty short chapter. I certainly might have missed some stuff in there, so feel free to hop in here if there's anything you want to talk about important that
I think
that you want to go over.
Yeah, no, I think I turned off my recording, but I turned it back on. That's good. That's a lesson. So yeah, my favorite thing was how it started. I really liked what you had to say about the the snack before the meal, if you will, at the beginning of the chapter. I really like that. And I guess I'm just excited to see you thinking about it like critically. I think that's a good idea. Sometimes it can be very like cerebral up in there, and I definitely would say, as like a Cosmere reader, I spent a lot of time wondering like what the heck it means. And so like if you're ever wondering that, I just would want to say like that's super normal. And like not to get discouraged, like to be able to be putting it together, because it's taken me like reading over like dozens of books to really start to appreciate them. But as I'm coming back and reading it, it's very exciting, and like it's really hyping me up because I'm relating to it. Yeah. So really love the introduction to Vin in the hideout. I liked you picked up right that she's a ska. They don't really like, they mention it, but they don't really go into it too much here, but you can feel it, right? You can really feel that these characters are struggling, and these obligators kind of have their fist around their throats, right? Like just extorting this poor man, even though we know it's a scam. That's what they're willing to do that. We talked about in the last one as well about the Canton, and the last episode, and it's another exposure to the concept. And I thought of like a good way of looking at it is and not in a spoiler way, but is like an order, right? Or like a chapter or something like that. And I just like how you picked up boxing as well. And one of the things that I enjoy about Sanderson is his liberties that he takes with vocabulary, and that goes from like people's vocabulary and other and just the way that he calls attention to the way people speak and what they call things, and I like that about him. So yeah, I like that you picked up the boxings as well. So otherwise, yeah, I couldn't agree more. Cayman, super big jerk. I had to bring it up because I just the name stuck out to me when I read it, and then I listened to it again, and I was like, yeah, that's it. That's Cayman. Like, I don't like that guy because he's hitting this young gal around, and then we also learn about Reen, and I think Reen is super important to Vin, and whenever there's like a Reen or an internal Vin thought, and it's very like, I like in the book how it's in italics because that doesn't really come over the same to me when I'm listening to it. So that's another thing I enjoyed, was just getting that, almost that internal, like,
internal
dark dialogue, right? Like, I can't trust anybody,
right.
and like, you're really getting to know Vin. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to chapter 2.
Nice. Yeah. Cool. So, chapter 2. Let's see. So I read these a couple, like, I don't know, maybe a week ago. Rough.
Nice.
And so before we started here, I kind of went back through chapter 1, but I think we'll just kind of jump right into chapter 2, and we'll see how much I remember. I got my book here, so I'll kind of skim it as I go on my recap. There might be a lot of and some dead air, so we can either fill that later,
we can always fill those.
Yeah, we'll figure something out.
Yeah.
So, chapter 2, the snack before the meal. So I put a note about how in here it talks about the terrace prophecies, and I thought prophecies kind of reminded me of kind of some of the kind of snacks before the meal that we would talk about or read when we were reading Wheel of Time. And so it really just kind of got me on that train of thought of like, oh, okay, like the terrace prophecies, like, what do they prophesize? Do they prophesize like how the hero of ages is going to come through and, save the people of this realm or planet or whatever, or kind of what those are? So,
and who are the terrace?
Yeah, because that's capitalized terrace, Terris.
Who or what? That's what we don't know.
So and here it's saying that, I will have the power to save the world. So this makes me think that this snack is back, and our protagonist probably are,
possibly.
Possibly. But I don't know. We'll kind of see. The hero of ages is kind of my guess on that one. But so we're still in Luthadel, but we are now in a Kelsier perspective as chapter 2 begins. I have some feelings, obviously, about him, about who he might be. Maybe he's this hero. It would make sense to me starting out with some of the things that he's doing with the ska and kind of getting them in the prologue to rise up even when they don't want to, and how he's kind of sowing this dissent among the people there. So just my initial opinion. So basically, we jump into him. He's talking about Luthadel, and he kind of gives us a description of the city, how basically any family who can afford to build and maintain like a big profile and a big presence in Luthadel is considered a big house, or I'm sorry, a great house. And then in between all these great houses, where they kind of sound like little fortresses or castles to me, in his description, because there's got these intricate with rows of spear-like spires, deep archways. And in between them, there are basically tenements. And we heard last chapter, in Vin's perspective, she was talking about like ska. Let's see, I'm going to jump back to it because I think it's worth talking about. When she's leaving the hideout and walking out into the world, she's talking about ska slums. So it kind of sounds like there's these pockets in the city of kind of nobility and nicer areas. Then, of course, you've got your tenements and your slums and other places kind of throughout the city. So good stuff there, good world building. And so he's here at night. There's a river that runs through the city, the river Chanarelle, runs through the city center. And again, there's ash coming down, which is clearly a big theme here. And yeah, so he talks about how Luthadell's main export was metal. And there's forges and mills working in the city. And I think we heard in the last perspective Vin talk about how, or maybe someone talked about how people, like, basically this underworld that they're a part of was kind of the only alternative to working in the mills or working like these laborious jobs, just kind of like the ska in the country or working in the fields. If you're here, you're kind of working in the factories. And so to avoid that, you kind of have to, if you want to get by and live, it sounds like you have to be basically become a criminal. And so he uses a good phrase here, the ska continue to toil. And so I think it fits his theme of, the ska are kind of working their lives away and toiling away. And obviously he's got some pretty strong opinions about that. So then we've talked about the Lord Ruler's palace. And I guessing this is the name of it here, Cretic Shaw, the Hill of a Thousand Spires.
Yeah, Cretic Shaw is how I've always called it. But yeah, okay. It sounds so intimidating. The Hill of a Thousand Spires. I love that.
Right. And so so these are all things we're learning about the city here. Then he makes note that the ash mounts, I should say, have been very active lately. I took a look at the map at the beginning of the book, and it does look to me like these ash mounts are basically some kind of volcano, at least based on what the drawn image is.
I think that's fair. No. I think that's really. Yeah. I like you resourcing what you've already been given, right? You know what I mean? Like that comes before. You read, and I think
only on this podcast, only what comes before.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I like that. I like that pickup there. Nice.
So he talks about how he doesn't think anyone's going to recognize him here because it's been 3 years since his capture, which we know based on the prologue that it sounds like he was in the pits of Hathsin.
Yeah, nice. Nailed it.
And he had those scars running all the way up and down his arms, which we're assuming probably he got while in the pits. Then he meets here a man named Doxson.
Nice. Love you some Doxson.
He said that just like him, he's wearing a nobleman's suit, which they're wearing to kind of keep basically blend in here in town. They don't want to look like they're peasants walking around. They just want to look like kind of middle class people walking around Luthadel. I thought this was interesting. So they talk about how most men of noble birth aren't wealthy enough to be considered like any kind of great house. But that in the final empire, nobility isn't about money. It was about lineage and history, which, okay, like that makes sense. And then here, the Lord Ruler was immortal. And he still remembered the men who had supported him in like the past. So
interesting.
That is very interesting. And
great world building going on.
Yeah. And so, like, is he actually immortal? I underlined that because, like, is he doing something to keep himself immortal? Is he actually some kind of god and like he is immortal, or is he doing some shady shit like, drinking ska blood or something to keep him like?
Definitely, hard saying. Kelsier definitely has a bad opinion of him.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and so we find out that Kelsier's a half blood, and
Right.
and in many ways it says in many ways that's worse than being a normal ska. Um, and so that's kind of interesting there. So they start to talk. Um, it sounds like Doxson knows about Trestine's death, and he like believes that Kelsier did have something to do with it. Kelsier just smiles about it and it's like, "Yep, you could say it, like you could say that."
Yeah.
And so, um, yeah, it's good stuff. We get some good bits about knives in people's chests, and it sounds like fun was had by Kelsier here. Um, so they kind of talk about that for a bit, and then Kelsier saying it's good to be back in Luthadel, and it's interesting. Kelsier brings up to Doxson something about him working with mistings, and so
Yeah.
I don't know what mistings are. I would have someone
Right.
has something to do with the mist, and we heard that the ska and the hovels and the prologue talked about mist wraiths,
Yeah, yeah,
and
but
so I don't
different
know if
different
that's
word choice. Yeah, no, right.
yeah,
Good
yeah,
thinking though. All connected to the mist. What's this
yeah.
connection, right?
So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, so it sounds like there's some kind of meeting gonna go on. Kelsier's asking, "Hey, who's coming?" And we learned quite a few names. They run through kind of quite a lot that I've got highlighted here. So
Oh yeah,
Breeze and Ham are coming.
Grease,
Um,
ham. Yes.
yep. They talk about Trap, but Trap's dead. That the
Yeah,
ministry finally, I guess,
got it.
got this guy, and they killed him, beheaded him, and so something else again going back to my hyperfixation on capitalized words. So they talk about it says sometimes Kelsier felt that a ska misting's life wasn't so much about surviving, and then it kind of goes on. So misting here is capitalized, and so like
Yeah,
I just don't understand like a ska misting. I don't. Well, I'm curious to understand, I guess, the context there,
right.
in the
It's
future when we
almost
read on.
like, yeah. Good thinking.
Um, so without Trap, I guess we're out a smoker, again capitalized, and ask, is there anybody else here? So in smoker obviously makes me think about burning, and then I was thinking about burning 10, and so like, but clearly there's certain people that must have certain, like not everyone can do everything as far as the magic. In this, it sounds like everybody maybe has different skills that they might have been born with or that they learned, and so I feel like a smoker is maybe one, maybe a misting is one. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
Doc,
nice. Well, I like the
yeah.
connection you're making there. That's very important.
So Doxson talks about instead of Trap, we've got Ruddy, and then Kelsier brings up someone named Clubs, and that he's supposed to be one of the best smokers in the city.
Yeah, clubs.
But Doxson doesn't really like him. But then I guess he kind of is like, all right, like I'll bring him in. And that one of his relatives is a 10-eye, again capitalized. So 10-eye
Tin eye.
smokers, Mistians, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so they're going to invite him, and then they talk about Yedin. And so Kelsier's like, yep, he's definitely going to be there, and that he's going to be paying for the whole thing, this whole whatever this meeting's all about.
Yeah, right.
Kelsier brings up another name. This is like I remember going through when I was reading this, I would be like, how many fucking names am I going to have to highlight on this page?
Yeah.
And so Kelsier nodded. Let's see. And then he brings up Marsh. And,
Yes.
and so this
Marsh.
sounds like it's Kelsier's brother,
Uh-huh.
and that his brother does not approve of his methods.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, Marsh. Fucking Marsh.
So, yeah, they kind of get into it, and Kelsier's like, "No, he's gonna jump on board once I persuade him."
So confident.
Yeah, and then they talk about how it's kind of insane, and so clearly their plan's a big plan. It sounds like a lot of things have come together over probably a long time and now is probably the time to strike. And I think obviously with Kelsier in the past that we've learned sowing the dissent amongst the ska, like it just sounds like everything's kind of ramping up for you know for whatever's in store here. Yeah. So we're jumping back into Vin's perspective. She is hanging out, and she is saying that she's kind of trying to stay out of sight because she doesn't want any of the guys to basically try to grab a hold of her and do bad things with her, which is a shame. But she's saying she's barely had any time to regenerate any luck, I'm assuming, and so it's kind of interesting. So I think Kelsier, he has to, it sounds like, swallow metals to then burn them, and so like if you swallow enough metal, maybe you can just keep doing it. And I don't know yet. And then she's just got this natural ability, it sounds like something that she's born with, to kind of impose her will, or kind of almost get into the psyche of people and use this luck, but it needs to build up. Like if she uses it, it's depleted, and she's got to fill up the tank.
It's consumed like Kelsier's. I think that's the one thing we know at this point. That's the same,
right?
But I really like where your head's at. Yeah, it's cool.
And so basically she's still hanging around, and they have clearly, they're back at the safe house after the meeting with the Pralin, and well, I got a note here. Okay, so let me get to that. But she's basically just trying to stay out of the way here, and it sounds like Cayman had whipped her the day before, and so she's still being beat by this guy. But then she talks about, I thought this was super interesting, and I'm gonna read a clip or a paragraph here. I don't know if we can if we can even read this. And it's
just do it. Yeah, no, I don't think I have any problems.
Yeah, okay. We're too small for them to care.
Yeah.
So this is her perspective. That was the irony. The beatings almost didn't hurt anymore, for Reen's frequent abuses had left Vin resilient, while at the same time teaching her how to look pathetic and broken. In a way, the beatings were self-defeating, bruises and welts mended, but each new lashing left Vin more hardened and stronger. And I got such big Egwene Alvear vibes when she's becoming the Amerlin, and well, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't read Wheel of Time, but when she totally. Tune out for the next 20 seconds. But when she is in the tower and she's captured and she's going through everything that the whites or basically everybody is putting her through in the tower, and she's like, oh, but I've used all of these stuff in my past and everything that I learned with the wise ones to persevere all these beatings and things like that. So I just gave me good vibes. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Totally.
And I know obviously, yeah. And so this is when Cayman stands up and he's like basically it's time to go. And Vin's like, time for what? What is going on? So next thing we know, they are walking basically into the ministry's canton of finance. It's a big imposing building. But then I thought this was interesting. It says, but then everything about the steel ministry tended to be imposing. So I feel like the Steel Ministry is like the upper, like that's like the
Greater body.
overarching thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the greater body, I would call it, yeah.
Right. And then there's like the Canton of Finance. And then if you look at the map, which we just discussed, I can because it's before.
It's right there. Yeah. It's really good right now. Especially Creedic Shaw and everything. Yeah, the maps. Yeah. Use the map.
Yeah. So, if you look on the map, you see that there's Canton of Resource and the Canton of Inquisition, which we already know about the Inquisitors a little bit. We've heard about that in the prologue. Canton of Finance is in here. So it's just interesting. So it sounds like to me there's these cantons that are kind of maybe the next level down, and they all have lines leading up the hierarchy to the Steel Ministry.
Right.
Which I'm assuming this Lord Ruler has something to do with, would be my guess. Critic Shaw.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. It's possible.
So basically they go in and Vin is like, what are we even doing here? Like, it takes some big balls, it sounds like, to walk into this place. And we learn that Cayman is basically fucking over the other guy who he had planned to, or who they were kind of running this operation with. Yeah, Theron.
Yeah,
and so he's basically like, we're gonna take all the money for ourselves and split. Like, we're not even gonna continue on with the full plan. We're just gonna get what we can now, basically like a down payment to repair the boats that they need, and like split. And so
dirty.
Dirty, but I mean, what can you expect when you're dealing with Cayman,
Yeah, totally.
And like,
just couldn't say better, dude.
is there a tie, like, in the word relation from Cayman to like Cayman Islands, and that's where all the dirty dealings happen? And, that's where
I love that.
I don't know.
I get it. I see it. I see that connection. That's funny.
So yeah, Vin's upset by this. She's like, it's just another betrayal, and everyone's out to get everybody. And this is the whole thing about her saying, like, anyone's gonna betray me, like anybody. She's got to be alone. Like, alone's the only way to go.
Reaffirming. Yeah, it's like reaffirming her beliefs.
And so, finally, they go inside, and they find They finally get called into someone's chamber. They're thinking they're going to talk to Praelin Laird, but he's not there. It's somebody else, someone that they don't recognize. And this is now High Praelin Ariev. So clearly even a step up. Yep. So his tattoos have to be like insane. I mean, if we're talking,
for sure.
I'm imagining this guy's got like great ink. And so he's kind of got this arrogance about him, I would say, especially based on what happens. And he's like, sell it to me now. Like, sell me this. The other obligator's away. He can't help you right now. You're talking to me. And Vin is not on board. She's like, we should go. Like, this is clearly not working out. Something's up. She's got a really bad feeling. And so Gaiman goes into this again about needing the contract, how it's going to help his family, and Vin prepares her luck again to kind of help push her forward and kind of get this through. And so she does use it, and this Ariev says, oh, yep, you've convinced me, just all kind of suddenly, yep, you're good. And he talks about how, like, your most recent letter, which it sounds like that's when the plan changed, suggested you needed the 3,000 boxings up front to finish, like, refurbish your equipment and your boats. And so, like, basically, here's my signed note. Take it out to the front desk. They'll hook you up with your boxings, and you'll be on your way. And so
Cha-ching.
That's what they did. So they walk out. And then we have our next perspective change.
Yeah, I really liked the end there of that that perspective was really like exciting. It's kind of tense, and it doesn't go
Oh
as
yeah,
well for Cayman as it did in with the other Prelude.
right.
So yeah,
And
but we jump into the next perspective.
Vin is so sure that something's wrong. Like she's like
Right.
this whole time, like her haunches are up, and she's like something is not right. But they
Yeah.
walk out. It's like scot free, apparently. So
Yeah. Right.
per- perspective change to Kelsier. Kelsier is hanging out, eating some cake, and uh, so they're watching. They clearly been watching Cayman and Vin come in and out of the ministry, and Doxson saying, "Hey, well, what do you think?" And Kelsier makes the joke, "Oh, the cakes are good," and Doxson's like, "No, like the girl," and so he like they walk out and kind of follow them out of the ministry into the street, pull their hoods up, trying to stay incognito, and well, he kind of asks how Doxson found out about Vin, and he said that basically his Kelsier's brother's the one that came and tried to swindle his brother a few months ago, and he brought this girl with him then too. And that basically Vin is becoming very well known around the city, and that people are starting to notice that, just like Cayman likes having her around because he knows good things happen when she is, that other people are starting to notice it too, and so that's clearly a bad thing. So Doxson figures out where she's going to be with some bribes, and basically he's been trying to keep an eye out on her so Kelsier could see her for himself, which now he is. Kelsier talks about seeing Cayman and thinking like, I'm gonna have to come up with something like to do with him, or like I don't know if it's maybe something way to get rid of him, or like include him in my plans, or kill him off. I don't know.
We've seen him do both, I guess, at this point.
Yeah, yeah. And then Kelsier talks about how this girl is at least a misting, and and that if his brother says that she's more, then he's inclined to believe his brother. But he's a bit surprised to see her using allomancy on a member of the ministry, especially inside a Canton building.
Yeah. Ooh, lots of good vocab.
Yeah. And so he's basically saying that she probably doesn't even know what her powers are, or what her abilities are, or what she's even doing. So almost like a what would that be from? I keep making all these Wheel of Time references, but like I feel like some Wilder. Of it is like yeah, Wilder. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, do it. We did the disclaimers, man. We can just put in the front. Wheel of Time spoilers. Easy peas.
Yeah. Our spoiler-free podcast isn't so spoiler-free. It's kind of
well, for other things.
Yeah.
Cosmere,
hey, before you guys come and listen to us, take 13 months, read all 14 books of Wheel of Time, then you can jump into our podcast.
Yeah.
Simple.
Or just don't get our references.
Yeah, perfect. Just forget these even happened.
No, it's good. For the niche audience, it's going to be the best. All right, I'll stop.
Yeah, they're going to be like, oh, yeah. So Kelsier talks about how trace minerals in the water can be burned, even for just a tiny bit of power, and that, like, basically maybe that's why, that's what's happening with her. And then he talks about how that's one of the reasons the Lord Ruler built his city here, that there's lots of metal in the ground here. Which if we got, everything's coming back to steel and metal, and, it's just kind of interesting. And so they're watching them walk off, and they see this high Praelin come out of the Canton with a guy who we find out is someone called the Steel Inquisitor. And so this guy sounds like a real fun guy because he's got spikes. He's got nail-like spikes in his eye sockets where his eyes should be. and like, he's clean shaven skull, these spikes out of his face. Like, and this is like two silvery discs sticking out of the sockets in the front where the eye should have been. So that's cool. It sounds like a real nice guy.
Yeah.
And Doxson says, "What's that doing here?" Instead of "What's he?" or "What's she?" "What's that doing here?"
Right.
And so we quickly learn that clearly this, or maybe we can infer that this Inquisitor, the Steel Inquisitor, can probably sense when someone is using, in Vin's case, the luck. And they've kind of, the High Praelan has this kind of smug look on his face of like, we've got him. And so, we kind of see that, hey, they're gonna go after Vin and probably Cayman. Kelsier's like, oh, they're not here for us, but Doxson's like, yeah, they're gonna go after this girl. And then we kind of learn that there's going to be probably a couple tails. Doxson agrees to take care of the tails on Cayman and the girl, and Kelsier's like, don't worry about the Steel Inquisitor, like, I'll distract him.
What?
And it's very interesting that Kelsier's like, I'm not going to let a possible Mistborn slip away from us. So that sounds very important to him. It's a very big deal. And then he talks about, or when we kind of see Kelsier jump in here to, I guess, distract this Inquisitor, he says, Kelsier reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small vial, and in the vial, in an alcohol solution, is iron, steel, tin, pewter, copper, bronze, zinc, and brass, the 8 basic elementic metals. He downs the whole content in one swig, pockets the empty vial, and he's like, I'll handle the, like, it's very cinematic. He takes the swig, puts the bottle away, and says, I'll handle that Inquisitor. And so basically he's going to try to divert him, and he says, meet me back at the 15th crossroad. And then his friend takes off, gives him a count of 10, and then Kelsier smiles, burns zinc, and reached out and yanked firmly on the Inquisitor's emotions. And this Inquisitor spins around and clearly, knows something's up, and the chase is on. So very, very interesting stuff in this chapter. So let's get into it. That's the end of my recap.
Oh, I love it. What an exciting end there, and especially like the zinc, pulling on the emotions, right? Because we've had emotions be tied to luck, and so I really like that, that difference in understanding coming from Kelsier and kind of the terminology that he uses, versus Vin's luck, and that kind of, I really enjoyed the understanding that he brings, just being like, she probably doesn't even know like what she's doing, but she does know. She just calls it something else. And so it's like kind of a cool juxtaposition of, how Kelsier is viewing this person and sizing them up. I enjoyed that because we know Vin has a name for it, and she definitely is cognizantly choosing to do it. Maybe doesn't understand how, but that's
right.
That's not stopping her, which is one of the things I love about Vin. And my reactions to you, love the call outs to Wheel of Time and everything there, and the correlations. And I think like that's one of the things I think about when I'm reading Sanderson, is that like this is a writer that read the things that I read before, right? That read Lord of the Rings, that read Wheel of Time, that read these high fantasy heavy hitters, and this is his fantasy. And so like, I just dig it, and I liked that you saw it that way. That wasn't a perspective that I thought of when I first read this, but after reading Sanderson's finish to the Wheel of Time. It's something I'm like brutally aware of, you know. So I really like that. Yeah, I wrote a couple of notes as well. I really enjoyed your you know your exploration of like and kind of almost like your evolution of your thought process on the misting, and I'm curious, like it almost, you know, you kind of gave me your opinion on what a misting was as you were recapping, but like what is your opinion of what do you think a misting is? What is a misting? What is a Mistborn to you right now?
Right. So it kind of sounds like Vin is someone who was born with the innate ability to do something with that, like, not everybody can do. It's like a special ability,
A
a
ska.
special trait that she has, and she's born with it. And then, which I think is in contrast to Kelsier, in my opinion, right now, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but like he's downing these metals and getting them into his body and then doing stuff, and she's just using the resources around her. Maybe, well, we think, because he talks about like, oh, there's small particles of whatever in the water that she could be pulling on, and so like maybe he was taught how to do it, but he can't just do it naturally. He's got to kind of put these things in him to use them. But she can just pull stuff out of, clearly the metal out of the earth or the water or the walls or whatever, and use it and kind of bend them to her will.
All right.
So that's kind of where I think I'm at.
Yeah, I like what you're thinking there. And then in terms of like the two different words to describe attached to Mist here, right? Because we get Mistborn, which is the name of the series, and we get Misting, and we have Miss Wraith, and these are all these Mist terms, right? That, I mean, for all points and purposes, like as far as we know, there's a lot of metal references going on, but those are Mist things. And I really like that, and I'm curious, like, what you think, and do you feel like there is a correlation, or
I mean, for sure there's gonna be a correlation. Do I know what the fuck that is? Probably not. I do think I remember.
I don't think so. You shouldn't, at least at this point.
Right. Well, at one point I do remember them talking about how I feel like certain maybe ska that were half born could have powers that like I can't remember if that must have been in the prologue somewhere.
I mean, I think
or
so.
Maybe it was chapter 1 about like how like
we've read it so far for sure.
That's why basically they don't want nobility or these other people having these relations, because you don't want all these people out in the world, these ska, having these abilities, and that most of them don't even know that they have them. Like, and I feel like that's stuff that I remember that we read
absolutely
talked about it.
Yeah, you brought it up. I think you brought it up too. We for sure saw it in the prologue, right? And like we learned like why we knew that young girl was going to die because didn't want there to be like a risk of something being passed on through the noble blood, right? And then we learned a little bit about the noble families in this last chapter. And we learn about how the Lord Ruler, who's immortal, air quotes, is... Because I liked that you picked up on, you're like, is he immortal? Is he doing something? Like, what's he? How is he immortal? Like, what do you mean immortal? Because everybody else seems pretty mortal in this world so far, as far as we can tell. And I think that you caught on another really important part. You said it, which I really liked, because it got me stoked, was that like, oh, the Lord Ruler like remembered those who were before, and well, now these people are royalty and he's the Lord Ruler. So like, what kind of connection do the royalty have with these noble families? And like, what does that mean? So I don't know. That gets me excited, and I like that you picked it up, and you kind of made note of it. That was cool, and I think that's it was keen. And I really liked we get to see our first Inquisitor, and that's like a really exciting thing. I wanted to ask if you would be like interested, and you get like you get a visual description of him. I was curious if you'd be interested in seeing an artist's rendition of it that's done as a tattoo. Yeah, because I love that you called out the discs in his eyes. And kind of like these metal spikes. So I just sent it to you over our little chat there, and if you want to take a look.
See. Yeah, let me open it up here. Oh, that is not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, cool. I like it. I like it. Yeah, the bald head and the circular, the circular rims with the spike coming out. You can kind of like catch it there in the back.
Okay. The spike comes out of the back of his head.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. See, I thought the spikes were coming out of his eyes.
Yeah, but that was the whole point is like, and that threw me too, because I actually had the same impression. Oh, but he said the circles.
Of the. Oh, okay.
And so that, but we're like, what does that tell? Like, what does that tell you? Like, how that spike get there?
Well, yeah.
Right. Like, I love it, and I love the Inquisitors are some of my favorite, like, to harken again to like Wheel of Time and all the different like mythical creatures that you learn about in that series, from Trollocs to Grey Men to all sorts of stuff, Golem, and like the Inquisitors are probably still, after reading all of the Cosmere that I can today, 324, 25, Inquisitors are my favorite. This is a great shot of it, and I see it as almost like the scene where the zinc is flared, and this guy's got a tattoo of it, and like the zinc is flared, that guy's alert, and he's like, what the fuck was that, and Kelsier's gonna deal with him. I love this scene. This chapter is awesome, and we kind of get to see
we've learned a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Like some of the other things. And I feel like
you could have missed it. I really, in books I've read before, I don't know if I've this critically, obviously, like gone back and either reread things or highlighted things, like underlined things.
Right.
Like I feel like I don't always think of things this critically, but this podcast is really making me try to, obviously I want to have a good conversation and I want to be able to talk about it. And so I'm really just working through these things in my mind a little more. And so it's really,
you're paying
good.
Close attention.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, I love it. I think it is really good. And like, another couple great terms that I like, love that you picked up. I mean, you're nailing it with like the capital letters, and like, that's not something that really comes through on audiobook, where like I listened to all of the Cosmere, and I haven't, read it yet, and I'm reading it this time with you, and that's like one of the great parts about this for me, is that like, I'm getting so excited when I see Smoker and Tin Eye and Mistings, and like definitely when I see these names coming up of the crew, I'm also getting excited and getting to learn more about Kelsier's world here in Luthadel. Because as he hasn't been here for 3 years since he got all those scars from the pits of Hassin, and like there's these big questions, and like I was curious if you wanted to go into like your biggest questions right now, and like what kind of questions do you have to yourself, for me, all of the above.
Okay. Um, so right off the jump, I think the most recent thing we've read about that I'm curious about is what does the ministry want to do with someone like Vin, who is maybe, a misting or misborn or whatever it might be. Um, like clearly they are very interested in her and the fact that she has these abilities, and so once if they were to get their hands on her, I guess, what does that mean for her? Is it like instant death? Is it, hey, you're going to work for us? Are we going to drive spikes through your eyes and now you're going to become an inquisitor?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
you
Right. Good
know,
questions.
so that's kind of the first thing. Some big
Good
outstanding
questions.
stuff. Obviously, there's a big plan that it's being laid that we haven't even heard about between Kelsier and Dox and the crew. Don't know what that's going to be, but obviously it's going to, I think, turn this world upside down.
Hmm.
Um, so that's
I
kind
think
of the
so
question
too.
of like what's going on there. Um, yeah, I mean, obviously, tons of questions about everything we've read, but those are kind of the big ones of like, where's the story going? It's clearly going towards this, whatever this catalyst is going to be, this climax of, I don't know if it's going to be the complete climax of the book or it's just going to be the catalyst that sets off the fire, to, whatever they've got in store. So that's going to be very interesting to follow up on and kind of see where we goes. And I think in my, you know, we wouldn't be getting Finn's perspective if she wasn't going to be this crucial character. I feel like so, I'm fully assuming that she's going to be joining the clan, this group, the crew that Kelsier and Doxson have. That's I think in the fantasy realm, that's kind of the track that this traditionally would take.
Sure, sure. That's
That
like the
and
theme
she
you're
might be
seeing.
skeptical about it. Yeah, she's going to
Right,
be
right.
skeptical, and she doesn't want to trust
Mm,
anybody, right? Because she's been
interesting.
taught not to for a long time, and she wants to be this loner.
Nice.
I think that's going to probably cause a lot of problems, but that's where I see it going. So
Nice. Nice. I like it. I'd love for the listeners to hear like how are you enjoying it, Kyle?
yeah, it's very so it there's always that new part of a new series that you're reading where like it's a lot to take in and it's a little overwhelming and like it can certainly be enjoyable, but it's more like it's a lot of work in a weird way, like
Oh yeah.
to keep all you're learning a whole new like it's a whole new story with whole new characters and a whole new world and new magic, and so it's just a lot to take in. And so while I am enjoying it, I think the thing obviously for me that makes it so enjoyable is being able to talk about it like with someone else that's reading it with me, like you. Like obviously this podcast is, that's why we did this, was to be I think a little more cognizant of and more on top of our reading and like kind of getting it down to a decent schedule where we kind of stay on top of it, because there'd be times when we were reading Wheel of Time and it'd be like, all right man, like what'd you read? And you're like, oh, I've read 2 chapters. And you'd be like, what'd you read? And I'd be like, I've read 15 chapters. And like we would just be off, and it just
Yeah, right.
it would be hard to stay neck and neck, and made conversations about what we were reading a little more difficult. I mean, we can
Right.
still have them, but I think
Yeah,
having
not
this
as
level of
detailed.
analysis, yeah,
Right.
like
It's fun.
it's so cool. It's very fun, and so
Yeah.
this is the most fun part of it. And so I'm ramping up my excitement in the book. Like I do want to find out these things, which like a
Right.
good book's going to draw you in, and I think it is starting to do that. And so that's kind of where I'm at.
Nice, nice. Well, I couldn't agree more. It's really fun to get to read it like at our paces, and like for me, I'm like privileged enough to have gone through it before, but through the audio experience and like being able to read it closely and just like having having learned as much as I've learned about the Cosmere, I am I'm still like loving to pick up these different pieces with this new look, and that's just really exciting. When you read like over 20 books, and you don't really expect that you're going to read them again.
Right.
But
Well, so
here
that's
I am.
that's what I was going to flip the question back to you. How are you feeling now that we are rereading it? Obviously in a little bit of a different form, but like, what's your excitement level? Like, how is it being back in the world?
Oh man, it's 15 out of 10. I am a big fan
Off the
of this.
scale.
Yeah, it's off the scale, man. I'm a big fan of this place, Ash Falling. This world, whatever you want to call it, this universe that we're in here. I know you can tell probably by context and me using the term like we're in the Cosmere, but like what does that mean? And where are we right now within that idea? So I think that it's really exciting to just to get to go through it again. And as much as I know the way some things end, it's really fun to just spend a little more time focusing on these details. So yeah, I'm loving it. I missed a lot of stuff the first time I listened to it, and it took me longer to just like break through what you just described about that, like that learning curve and these terms and all these things. And I think like that made me miss out on stuff, so I'm really appreciating your approach as well, and like happy to be a part of that.
Nice. Well, any final thoughts before we wrap this up? And because I'm eager to read chapter 3 and 4 and kind of see how far we can get and what our next
Nice.
podcast is going to be like. So,
Oh, I'm so looking forward to it. Yep. I think my next major, like my major question for you is just, yeah, to just like check in with how you feel that like energy is with the world that we're experiencing, and what I'd love to see, like, if you feel like this is like an attempt on grim dark, or like what kind of universe this is, because I feel like it's so different than Wheel of Time, and in the sense of you know that was kind of like a universe where Ash wasn't falling all the time. And so like what other kind of things are you excited to explore? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, Wheel of Time was kind of this pretty big overarching, like, good versus evil in a very literal, like, you've got these humans, and then you've got, someone that's, the kind of the chosen one to kind of lead them through and fight the evil, right? And like the evil is mostly, I mean, you've got some humans in that story that are dark friends and are betraying, their friends and loved ones and whoever, but mostly it's like these Trollocs and these like evil creatures that are now fighting. Like it's like this really visible, and like you can kind of draw a line of like good evil.
Right.
This so far, I still don't know. It sounds like the ska and the nobility like might be the same overarching like species, if that makes sense. Like I haven't gotten
Yeah.
anything to say yet that they are like of a completely different, like they might look different, maybe they are a different race or something like that, but it seems like they're the same species. And so the only evil that I know is that like these one people are being subjected and subjugated,
Right.
and they are poverty stricken and being treated as slaves in most cases. So that I feel like is the so far the good evil,
Right. Right.
of like
The class struggle versus
the
the like.
class, yeah,
Yeah.
class. So that's more of where this story to me is going. Whether it that's it, like that's where the evil is, or if it's going to be something
Remains to
bigger
be seen.
of like, yeah, it remains to be seen. So that's kind of where my head's at.
we'll just have to read and find out, right? Raffo,
Oh,
from my
man.
Cosma, from my Cosmere, but my pals out there. Well, yep, just happy to be a couple Misty boys here tonight, and
Misty Boys.
Misty boys, and yeah, I think I got nothing else to add. Looking forward to episode 3. I also think
Cool.
at the end we should do another clap because I have a
What?
chunk of time that's not recorded, and I need to find out what that chunk is so I can sync up the clap
Okay.
at the end, and it should work.
All right. Perfect.
Easiest.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. We really appreciate you listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Looking forward to it.
3, 2, 1.
Awesome. Thanks.